Hello again. Sorry for the delay. I've been having technical difficulties. First, it was just getting everything set up and working again, and then it became no internet yesterday, was in and out, which flummoxed everything. So, I'm back again. Sorry about the wait. That and I wanted to... The lectures probably wouldn't have made sense if I had put them up. The reason is it starts... The ones that I have pre-recorded starts at 13.2... And we didn't get all the way through the first half of chapter 13, so I didn't want to leave you going, we talked about this, and then there's a whole big, and then you would have been like, ugh. So if I need to push back the chapter quizzes, I will do that, so, because I just got my lectures up. So I might go in there and fix that as well. Just a heads up on that. If you have any questions, I am getting around to everybody's emails and messages. I'm sorry it's taken me a bit. It's been interesting. So, not as bad as the year, though. I started the semester and my entire, my courses got deleted. And nobody could, and when I was locked out of it, it was, that was a weird one. Anyway, long story short. So let's go ahead and pick back up where we left off, so that way you know what we're talking about. So I was talking about hormones. I was talking about upregulation, where basically the receptors in the cell. Remember, the cell can change its sensitivity to hormones. So if there's a decrease in hormones, but the cell is really needing to hear from that hormone, he will make more receptor proteins on the inside to become more sensitive to the lesser amount of hormones. It's kind of like listening. It's like you can just barely hear somebody talking, so you stress hearing. Downregulation is the opposite. It's where the cell reduces its receptor proteins by breaking them down, usually with lysosomes or something like that, or recycling them. Because there's just too much hormones, it's overstimulation. It's like why we have, and now I've seen those earbuds that go in the loops. So if somebody's getting overstimulated auditorily, you can stick in, stop listening or decrease the noise so you're not overstimulated. And same thing with the cells. So yes, cells can get overstimulated too with hormones. So they reduce the receptor proteins, thus reducing their sensitivity to the hormone, and that's downregulation. Now, again, going back to steroid and thyroid, remember what's happening is usually steroids, because they are made of lipids and the cell membrane is made of lipids, it means they can go through really easy-like. So steroids, the steroid hormone gets a free pass through the phospholipids that make up the cell membrane and then finds a receptor inside. So this is a major difference from the non-steroids that we're going to see in a moment, and I want you to understand that difference, is that steroids go through, find the receptors inside the cell, whereas non-steroids have the receptors on the cell membrane. So that's a major difference. And then it goes on, and that goes into the nucleus, and then basically tells the DNA what proteins need to get made. So that goes through transcription, and then translation, and outside the ribosomes make the proteins required. So that's the steroid hormone action, what I was talking about. Now, non-steroids, this is how we control things like blood sugar, fight or flight, cell membrane permeability, includes amines, peptides, proteins, and glycoproteins. Basically, these guys, because they are not made of a lipid like the hormones are, the steroid hormones are, the non-steroid hormones have to bond to a receptor protein on the cell membrane, and that's the major difference. So remember, steroids go through the cell membrane. Like Monty is going through somewhere over there. And kisses. And then non-steroid have to have a receptor on the cell membrane. They don't get a free pass. So they have to have a receptor on the cell membrane or they no go. Now, when they bond to the receptor protein, it basically results in a whole bunch of changes into an activated enzyme. So it changes, we do have to apply ATP to it, and then CCAMP, it turns into CCAMP, which becomes a second messenger, which then goes on to basically cellular function, such as basically tell down to break down glucose. So this is how, most of us that are not diabetic make a lot of our like insulin and glycagon. So like if I get into the donuts, which I will, I eat donuts and my system goes, oh God, she's gotten into the donuts again. Quick, let's make some insulin to break down all that blood sugar. Whereas in the other one, if I haven't been eating a lot of sugar lately and I've been a good girl, my system, if my blood sugar goes down, my system will release glucagon, which is a non-steroid hormone, to tell my cells that, hey, we need to release sugar that we have stored up in the liver or somewhere else. So that way, we can get our sugar levels up, where we should probably go tell her to eat a donut. So again, the major difference between the two is the steroids go through, whereas the non-steroids have to have a receptor on the cell membrane. And then it goes through a whole bunch of second messenger fun. I'm not going to get into that level of detail because I think it's a bit cray-cray. So commonly the G protein regulated is using cyclic AMP as a second messenger. So basically ATP hits and turns into cyclic AMP, and then that goes on and tells the cell what to do on the DNA side. So this is how we control transcription, translation, what we talked about way back when at the beginning of 168. This is basically how we control all that. So there's the weirdo guys. Remember I said there's a third kind of sort of, and that's prostaglandins. So prostaglandins are also known as local hormones or locally acting signals, which is a paracrine thing. It's potent and we only need it in very tiny amounts. It's not stored because it's so potent. We just make it right before we need it, and then it's rapidly inactivated. It has a variety of effects. A lot of times it's to alter the message on other hormones. So basically it's like you say, hey, she's eating the donuts again. Well, sometimes maybe it's because I ate a whole bunch of, different type of sugar. I'm just giving an example that's not exactly a perfect example there. But it lasts for like a fraction of a second, pops in, tells the body it alters the message being sent by the original hormone, and bops out. That's it. So that's kind of, again, biology is filled with those weirdos, and these are those weirdos. So half-life, and this is something that will pop up. I will have one math question on how to figure out the half-life of something, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute, very badly. Not the math is bad. I'm just going to show you what's going on there. So basically, a half-life is the time it takes for half of the hormone to be removed from the plasma. So a short half-life means it's a quick turnaround, which usually means we don't need a lot of it. But a long half-life means longer lasting effects. And depending on what it's made of, you get different half-lives. So amines, they only live for about 2 to 3 minutes before they start degrading down into nothing. Remember this exponential curve, it halves, given enough time. And you're going to see that in the math in a minute. It's kind of like radioactivity, except it's a whole lot faster than radioactivity. And then you got the thyroid hormones, which is a huge difference between T3 and T4. Now, I am going to get into some of these and what they do a little later down the road. But, like, for instance, T4 sticks around way longer than T3 does. So T4 is usually in your system for about 6.7 days, whereas T3 is in for, like, a third of a day. And then, bam, gone. Or 2/3 of a day. Anyway, polypeptides, it's anywhere from 4 to 40 minutes. Proteins is 15 to 170 minutes, and steroids can anywhere be from 4 to 120 minutes. So it just depends on these metabolic rates. How long do we need them to stick around? How long do we not need them to stick around? And that's where we get half-life. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to get out... let me go in here and let me make a new Google Doc, create and share. And I will make it big and I will type out the math because I would like you to know the math into discovering what's going on with the half-life. So let's just say you've got, now we always assume that when we're starting out that you have 100% of said hormone, okay? Now let's just say you have a half-life of 20 minutes. What would happen after, how much would be left after an hour? So the half-life, I can spell, half-life of hormone, and say what's left after an hour. Okay. And that's most of the questions. Like I said, in the test that's coming up, you're only going to have next week. Not this week, next week. You're only going to have one of these questions. I put it in there just so you know what the math is going on. But you assume you always start at 100%. So we started at 100% of whatever that hormone is. And then, basically, how many, 20 minutes or an hour. So if you, go ahead. Calculators are your friend. Hopefully you can see this. So, an hour is 60 minutes divided by 20 minutes, and that should give you 3, okay? So, 60 divided by 20 equals 3. And that's how many times we're going to have 100%. So, 100%. What's half of 100%? 50. So that's 1. So we do it again. What's half of 50%? 25. That's the second time we've halved it. Now we're going for the third time we half it, because right here, that's 3 times. So what's half of 25? That's 12.5%. And that's number 3. And that, my friends, is how much is left of that particular hormone after an hour. Now, I can go over that and give some other examples a little later if you'd like me to. Just let me know in the comments and whatnot. But that's basically how you do the math to figure out what's going on with that. So, again, what you do is you figure out, what's, the half-life of the hormone, and what's and how long it is that you're looking at it for. And that's basically how you figure it out. Or at least that's my way of figuring it out. You guys who are better math whizzes than I, maybe you can figure out a better way around that. And put it in the forums. Please feel free. So anyway, so there you go. There's that. Now, generally, how do we control these guys? Well, the main control, especially by tropic hormones, is your hypothalamus. And that's usually controlled by your central nervous system. So, yes, the central nervous system controls it, but your hypothalamus is your guy that's in charge of pretty much everything that goes on in your endocrine system. So, if the hypothalamus gets damaged in any form or fashion, your endocrine system is... which is something you've got to be very careful, especially hypothalamus and pituitary. So, hormonal control, hypothalamus, nervous control, controlled by the autonomic nervous system, hormonal control by regulating blood levels. So first, the hypothalamus usually secretes a releasing hormone. And this is to release other areas, other glands in your body, other endocrine glands to turn on or off. And this is basically how it works. It works usually by a cascade. So the hypothalamus gets turned on and he starts releasing his hormones. And usually it goes to the pituitary. Now it can go to other target glands, but usually first thing he does is he'll activate the pituitary for certain reasons. And then the pituitary releases, and that will release into a target gland. Another target gland. So that could be anything in the reproductive system. Remember, ovaries and testes are also glands. That could be anything in your digestive system. We have several, the adrenal glands and whatnot in there. So that's usually how it's a cascade. And usually what happens is there is a feedback mechanism to this, to where if the target gland gets enough information and everything is awesome and cool, then the target gland will, release its own hormone to tell the pituitary, we got it, cool, knock it off. And sometimes the pituitary can turn itself off if he gets enough feedback without even the target gland doing something. Sometimes the pituitary is so cool he can turn himself off, going, I think they got the message, we good. Also, sometimes the target gland can release something that tells the hypothalamus we're all good, and then he stops, and the pituitary stops, and then the target gland is left alone. So there's different control mechanisms in this. I'm actually going to show you. No, that's blood clotting. That's a different thing. I'll show you that in the next lecture, actually. So it's a whole map, but I'm trying to break it down very simply for you right now to kind of understand. So a lot of the control is like, again, releasing until somebody either gets feedback saying we've got enough, or something else gets released. And more than often, it's more than one of these is happening at the same time, because our body likes redundancy in that area. It's just not a false positive, because we do run into that sometimes. So again, speaking of like blood calcium, the guys that are in control of blood calcium are our parathyroid glands right here in the back of our a thyroid. And what happens is they sense, we don't have a lot of calcium in the blood, so they secrete parathyroid hormones and basically says, we need more, calcium. Bones, release the calcium. And the bones will basically start releasing more calcium. They'll start breaking themselves down to get more calcium in the blood, so that way the muscles can work. Another one is the preganglionic fibers that basically tell the adrenal gland to get going. We're going to talk about each one of these a little bit in more further depth in a minute. They can also, we got the central nervous system, goes down the fiber, tells the medulla of the adrenal gland to start pumping up epinephrine and norepinephrine. So therefore, in case we need, like going into fight or flight, which is our dear friend epinephrine. Hypothalamus, again, he is the master control. He will stimulate everybody. He's just that gifted, so he can hit the thyroid gland, which then tells the adrenal cortex, or he could do it directly himself, or he can, So hypothalamus is pretty cool, the fact that he's the master control dude. Yes, he's under control of the central nervous system, but at the same time, he runs the show. So he can turn everybody off, or just selected people, or tell the thyroid gland to talk to somebody else, or tell all these guys to turn on. So that's why he's considered the master gland. I'm not going to watch this, because if I put it up, YouTube is going to, ding me. But that's pretty much the rest of chapter 13, the first half. The second half, you'll see right after this, and you can jump in there. So now I'm going to getting back to emails and fixing a few things. Hopefully you'll see all that by Friday. Also, I may be going through and fixing some of the videos. Keep in mind, the video lectures I put up are a couple of years old. And if I say any dates in them, ignore them. They don't pertain to this class. Okay? And if you have any questions about that, you can always message me. I will try to get back to you as fast as I can, as long as the internet doesn't go out and other strange things. So let's hope everything settles down. But with that said, thank you so much. Sorry this took a minute. Technology was against us for some strange reason. So thank you again, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.